Welcome to Father and Son. The son's not here today. Tom has taken a few days holiday. So I've got to do the show on my own, so it won't be as long as normal, I don't think. Well, it's Friday the 2nd of September, last round of football coming up. The 8's already been decided and basically all the games have been determined. And this morning the AFL put out the draw. 3 games at the MCG and 1 game at either Etihad or Sydney, depending on how St Kilda and Sydney finish up. It's going to be a big week. I think the final's going to be very exciting. I think there's 5 or 6 teams that have got a chance of playing off on what is normally the last Saturday in September, but will be the first Saturday in October this year. And, Collingwood and Geelong are favourites. You've got West Coast and Hawthorn in the 4. Carlton, if they play to their best, can beat anybody. And I think St Kilda's coming good at the right time. And the Swans beat Geelong last week. So it's going to be quite an interesting game. And so it's going to be a big final season. Whereas I was talking to David Parkin yesterday at the Savage Club football lunch, and he said it's been a rather disappointing season because of the so many one-sided games. I think this is going to happen even more so when Greater Western Sydney come in. But he thinks, like I do, that it's going to be a great final series, and I think it will be. So we just got to hope the Blues play well. Well, obviously, all over the news today is Julia. The policy to send back the refugees to Malaysia has failed. The High Court, as you've probably all read, voted 6-1 to say that it was Australia wasn't allowed to do it because it breaches the international treaties on how you treat refugees. They also said that the children under 18, the minister could not send them away and still accept his responsibility for their due care. I think they were all a bit surprised, the cabinet of the government. Julia then came out and criticised the High Court, which is absolutely unheard of. I mean, you just don't do that in this country. I've never known of anybody else to do it who sits in such high office. And she was obviously upset by the decision. But last week I sat with 2 judges of our Supreme Court at lunch, and they both thought that the High Court would do as they did. So it was very interesting in senior legal circles that they thought the High Court would turn it over, which says the government got bad advice, very bad advice. So whoever was advising the government, the Solicitor General, whoever it is, really gave them, rotten advice. It just shows that local governments really aren't very good at managing the affairs of the nation. Now, we had Whitlam many years ago, and he really stuffed the whole country up. I suppose the only one that's really been good was Paul Keating. He kept Hawke on the straight and narrow, and I think they did a fairly good job running the country. And these, Rudd and now Gillard have really done a shocking job. And it's reflected in the opinion polls. Labor's never been worse. There's no doubt if there were an election soon, they would get wiped off the map, the Labor Party. And it was reported this week in the paper that Rudd would be the only person that hold his seat in Queensland. So it shows you things are tough. So then, as a result of that, the poor polls, the Labor members who have thought they're in safe seats are getting very nervous. So if you read the Herald Sun today, tick, tick, tick is the headline. They're saying Gillard's going to have to go. Now, there are quite a number of people in the Labor Party, senior people, who are talking about Gillard going and replacing her with Rudd, of all people. What was quite clear in the bits that I read in the papers this morning was that no one is looking to have a coup. So it really will depend on whether Julia is pushed to retire or step out of the office. Now, having met a lot of these people in politics who've been in leadership positions, whether it be premiers or prime ministers, that I've got to know, none of them retire. None of them retire. Look at Johnny Howard. He wasn't going to retire. He talked about leaving, but he didn't, to the disappointment of many in the Liberal Party, because he did such a mighty job. But I think he would have been better off had he retired. Whether Peter Costello would have won that election, I don't know. But I don't believe for one moment that Julia Gillard will vacate her position and hand it over to Rudd, particularly as they don't seem to get on too well. I mean, she led the coup that got rid of him last time. And it was interesting, again, some comments from the previous Premier Brumby in Victoria. He said, you know, just because your polls are down, if you're in a leadership job, you don't walk away from it. You've got to, you know, keep going, and I think that's what will happen. So although there's a lot of talk about Julia going, my own view is she won't. And she'll still be there, and they will bumble along until either Mr. Thompson causes them. He looks like he could be charged criminally. That means he'll have to retire, and there'd be a by-election in the New South Wales seat. If that happens, almost certainly Labor would lose the seat. Government could change to the Conservatives. Abbott would be Prime Minister. If that were the case, he would call for a double dissolution straight away. And he'd do that for two reasons. One, to get a big majority, which he'd win. And he'd call a double dissolution so he could reduce the influence of the Greens. That would halve their number of seats. So it's all very interesting, but it's not doing much good in the way the country is being run. And the refugee problem really has been taken totally out of context. The carbon tax is a much more important issue. She's made a fundamental error there in pushing it, and that's all Abbott has to do is stick to the carbon tax, being against it, and he'll walk in the next poll. Well, so much for politics. The Foster's bid. Now we know that SAB Brew, which used to be a South African brewery, who merged with the American brewery, now run out of London. They've gone and raised $12 billion in the market. So, and they're due in the next 2 weeks to put their offer to shareholders. And of course they have to have the funds in place for the bid to be able to do that, otherwise they can't register the bid. So that looks like they're on track. Within 2 weeks they'll make the bid. Because of the uncertainty in the marketplace, stocks and shares and the volatility, my guess is the board of Foster's have made a very bad mistake in not negotiating some time ago with the SA Brew, because they would probably have been able to get the price lifted. Now I don't think SA Brew need to lift the price, and it would seem to me that they could well get a successful outcome at the current offer. So within 2 weeks that offer will be in front of shareholders, and then of course Foster's has a limited period to respond to it. So the shareholders will probably make up their mind. I can't imagine that they won't. If I were a shareholder, I'm not anymore, I would certainly be accepting SA Brew's offer. The only thing that could happen, once that offer is on the table, if there are any other players, then they could come out of the woodwork. So it's going to be interesting days. Again, they've been losing market share. Very disappointing profit result for the brewery. And I'm off to Sri Lanka to meet the president, the chairman of the bank, and speaking to 250 senior businessmen next week on Wednesday, and I hope to get one day at the cricket at the second test. So next time you hear from me, and Tom should be back, I'll have a bit to say about Sri Lanka, because I don't think Australia really knows much about Sri Lanka. We've ignored them because of this ongoing war with the Tamil Tigers. Now it's over. There's probably some good opportunities for Sri Lankans and Australians to do more business together. Okay, that's it for this week. It's going to be damned hot in Sri Lanka, and we'll see you all next week.